Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm continuing my read through and review of The Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. As always, you can find all episodes of the show, along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the podcast at the website, which is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. Support is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. Please check out the links in every episode description for friends of the show, the co-host of the show, Jen, the Arcane Observer, as well as Michael Strange and Trouble Minds Radio and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP, Digital Broadcasting. And I think that takes care of everything for now. And we can get right back to reading this book here. As always, as I'm trying to remember to say now with these shows, this is a read through of this book. I've never read through it all before, and so we may come across views that we do not agree with, myself included. So, and also this is a book from a century ago now, basically. So there will probably be things that science has proven are not quite the way that they thought it was. They were back then as well. So just all these things, all the disclaimers. Just want to make sure I get them out there at the beginning of the show because we ran into a couple of things before where I had to stop and mention that. So anyway, getting to the text here, and his books are available through Amazon, but also through other sources online. And so you can check them out for yourselves, and but also get them through Amazon and through the Kindle app and everything. So, but let me find where I was at here. Okay, so I think this is where I was at. Let's start off here. It says, for several days, the south of England was a dumping ground from somewhere. If you'd like to have a chemist's opinion, even though it's only a chemist's opinion, see the report of the meeting of the Royal Chemical Society, April 2, 1903. Mr. E. G. Clayton read a paper upon some of the substance that had fallen from the sky, collected by him. The Sahara explanation applies mostly to falls that occur in southern Europe. Further away, the conventionalists are a little messy. For instance, the editor of the monthly weather review, 29-121, says of a red rain that fell near the coast of Newfoundland early in 1890. It would be very remarkable if this was Sahara dust. Mr. Clayton said that the matter examined by him excuse me, was merely wind-borne dust from the roads and lanes of Wessex. This opinion is typical of all scientific opinion, or theological opinion, or, this page already went over this. We read this already. Let's see here. This didn't start me on the right page. So, and there we get to that thing the last time we read that had to stop. But, so we're going to skip a little bit ahead here. So if you want to hear the rest of that paragraph, just listen to the last of these shows once it comes out. I'm recording these sort of ahead of schedule. So, anyway, we'll go here. It says, to think is to conceive incompletely, because all thought relates only to the local. We metaphysicians, of course, like to have the notion that we think of the unthinkable. As to opinions or pronouncements, I should say, because they always have such an authoritative air of other chemists, there is an analysis in Nature 6854, 68-54, giving water and organic matter at 9.08%. It's that carrying out of fractions that's so convincing. The substance is identified as sand from the Sahara. The vastness of this fall in Nature 68-65, we are told that it had occurred in Ireland too. The Sahara, of course, because prior to February 19, there had been dust and storms in the Sahara. Disregarding that, in that great region, there's always, in some part of it, a dust storm. However, just at present, it does look reasonable that dust had come from Africa via the Canaries. The great difficulty that authoritativeness has to contend with is some other authoritativeness. When an infallibility, words are hard, clashes with a pontification, they explain. Nature, March 5, 1903. Another analysis, 36% organic matter. Such disagreements don't look very well. So, in Nature 68-109, one of the differing chemists explains. He says that his analysis was of muddy rain, and the other was of sediment of rain. We're quite ready to accept excuses from the Most High, though I do wonder whether we're quite so damned as we were, if we find ourselves in a gracious and tolerant mood toward the powers that condemn. But the tax that now comes upon our good manners and unwillingness to be too severe. Nature 68-223. Another chemist. He says it was 23.49 or 49% water and organic matter. He identifies this matter as sand from an African desert. But after deducing organic matter, but you and I could be identified as sand from an African desert after deducting all there is to us except sand. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Why we cannot accept that this fall was of sand from the Sahara, omitting the obvious objection that in most parts the Sahara is not red at all, but is usually described as dazzling white. The enormousness of it, that a whirlwind might have carried it, but that in that case it would be no supposititious. That's quite the word. Or doubtfully identified whirlwind. But the greatest atmospheric cataclysm in the history of this earth. Journal Royal Meteorological Society 30-56. A lot of these are abbreviated names for these journals or these magazines, so some can be kind of hard to figure out what they are. That up to the 27th of February, this fall had continued in Belgium, Holland, Germany, and Austria, that in some instances it was not sand, or that almost all the matter was organic, that a vessel had reported the fall as occurring in the Atlantic Ocean, midway between Southampton and the Barbados. The calculation is given that in England alone, 10 million tons of matter had fallen. 10 million tons. Okay, I read that correctly. It had fallen in Switzerland, in parentheses here, Simmons Meteorological Magazine, March 1903. It had fallen in Russia, Bulletin Communication Geology 22-48. Not only had a vast quantity of matter fallen several months before in Australia, but it was at this time falling in Australia. In parentheses, Victorian Naturalist, June 1903. Enormously, red mud, 50 tons per square mile. The Wessex explanation, or that every explanation is a Wessex explanation. By that, I mean an attempt to interpret the enormous in terms of the minute, but that nothing can be finally explained, because by truth we mean the universal, and that even if we could think as wide as universality, that would not be requital to the cosmic quest, which is not for truth, but for the local that is true, not to universalize the local, but to localize the universal, or to give to a cosmic cloud absolute interpretation in terms of the little dusty roads and lanes of Wessex. I cannot conceive that this can be done. I think of high approximation. Our intermediatist concept is that because of the continuity of all things, in quotation marks, which are not separate, positive, or real things, all pseudo things partake of the underlying, or are only different expressions, degrees, or aspects of the underlying. So then that a sample from somewhere in anything must correspond with a sample from somewhere in anything else. That by due care and selection and disregard for everything else, or the scientific and theological method, the substance that fell, February 1903, could be identified with anything, or with some part or aspect of anything that could be conceived of. With sand from the Sahara, sand from a barrel of sugar, or dust of your great-great-grandfather. Different samples are described and listed in the Journal of the Royal Meteorological Society, 30-57. Or we'll see whether my notion that a chemist could have identified some of these samples as from anywhere conceivable is extreme or not. In quotation marks, similar to brick dust in one place, buff or light brown in another place, chocolate colored and silky to the touch and slightly iridescent, gray, red rust color, reddish raindrops and gray sand, dirty gray, quite red, yellow-brown, with a tinge of pink, deep yellow clay color. Those are all in quotation marks, all different little fragments there. In Nature, the publication, it is described as of a peculiar yellowish cast in one place, reddish somewhere else, and salmon colored in another place. Or there could be real science if there were really anything to be scientific about. Or the science of chemistry is like a science of sociology, prejudiced in advance, because only to see is to see with a prejudice, setting out to prove that all inhabitants of New York came from Africa. Very easy matter. Samples from one part of town. Disregard for all the rest. There is no science but Wessex science, and he is sort of making points here. Anyway, I think that's kind of funny. According to our acceptance, there should be no other, but that approximation should be higher. That metaphysics is super evil. That the scientific spirit is of the cosmic quest. Our notion is that in a real existence, such a quasi-system of fables as the science of chemistry could not deceive for a moment, but that in an existence endeavoring to become real, it represents that endeavor and will continue to impose its pseudo-positiveness until it be driven out by a higher approximation to realness. That the science of chemistry is as impositive as fortune-telling. Or no, that though it represents a higher approximation to realness than does alchemy, for instance, and so drove out alchemy, it is still only somewhere between myth and positiveness. The attempt at realness, or to state a real and unmodified fact here, is the statement: all red rains are colored by sands from the Sahara Desert. My own impositivist accentuses are that some red rains are colored by sands from the Sahara Desert, some by sands from other terrestrial sources, some by sands from other worlds, or from their deserts, also from aerial regions, too indefinite or amorphous to be thought of as worlds, in quotation marks, or planets. That no supposititious, that's a terrible word, whirlwind can account for the hundreds of millions of tons of matter that fell upon Australia, Pacific Ocean, and Atlantic Ocean, and Europe in 1902 and 1903. That a whirlwind that could do that would not be supposititious. Okay, I'm getting better at that. But now we shall cast off some of our own Wessicality, that's again referring to that place, Wessex, by accepting that there have been falls of red substance other than sand. We regard every science as an expression of the attempt to be real. But to be real is to localize the universal, or to make some one thing, as wide as all things, successful accomplishment of which I cannot conceive of. The prime resistance to this endeavor is the refusal of the rest of the universe to be damned, excluded, disregarded, to receive Christian Science treatment by something else so attempting. Although all phenomena are striving for the absolute, or have surrendered to and have incorporated themselves in higher attempts simply to be phenomenal, or to have seeming in intermediateness, is to express relations. A river. It has water expressing the gravitational relation of different levels. The water of the river. Expression of chemic relations of hydrogen and oxygen, which are not final. A city. Manifestation of commercial and social relations. How could a mountain be without base and a greater body? Storekeeper live without customers. The prime resistance to the positivist attempt by science is its relations with other phenomena, or that it only expresses those relations in the first place, or that a science can have seeming or survive in an intermediateness as something pure, isolated, positively different, no more than could a river or a city or a mountain or a store. This intermediateness wide attempt by parts to be wholes, that's WHOLES, which cannot be realized in our quasi-state, if we accept that in the coexistence of two or more wholes or universals is impossible. High approximation to which, however, may be thinkable. Scientists and their dreams of pure science. Artists and their dreams of art for art's sake. And I think we're going to stop there. And I'm going to see about putting a bookmark in this so that I don't accidentally lose a page like I appeared to do this time. So there's a lot there as far as what he is trying to say, and I don't claim to know all of it, but that is quite a bit of material that he talks about there falling from the sky. And I do get that point there where if it was a whirlwind that put that much material down, there'd be a lot more, at least I think I get that anyway, there'd be a lot more damage. There'd be a lot more besides that going on in the world. So, but yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all for listening. And I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.